again, we haven't even gotten into some of the different things Mahito can do because he really doesn't need to bring anything out for any of these curses.
100%. I mean, the Finger Bear is gonna make that cursed energy arrow shoot it at Mahito. It's not gonna do anything. He's gonna try to make that like explosive barrier of cursed energy. Mahito's not getting done dirty the same way Yuji did, and then it's just gonna get bodied. Like you said, Mahito does not even have to activate his technique really here. He just, with pure cursed energy manipulation, he can pretty easily defeat the Finger Bear. And moving on to another cursed spirit that's a little bit higher level than the ones we've talked about before, we have Tamamo no Mei. This is a special grade curse that Geto actually summoned in his fight with Yuta in Volume 0. And while it does hold the same rank as Mahito, I don't think it holds the same amount of power, and that's really just because we haven't seen it do anything all that impressive in story.
Agreed. Unfortunately, Geto pretty much just uses it as a sacrificial lamb. He literally doesn't even use it for its intended technique, its intended purpose. So, I mean, as far as it goes, despite it, like you said, sharing the same grade as Mahito, unfortunately, it just has nothing to really show for offering any kind of real threat against Mahito.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to really be doing much because we don't even really know what it can do even in theory. So if Geto decided it wasn't going to be useful for its technique or power against Yuta, but decided to just combine it into this amalgamation of cursed energy power, it most likely isn't all that great, in spite of its grade as a curse. And next up here, we have another curse spirit that Geto actually showed off. It's Kuchisake Onna. This is the curse that is the vengeful curse spirit that asks if it's pretty to Toji, and its unironic greatest feat is being able to slightly cut Toji's ear with its clippers. And like, as crazy as that is, that's probably more impressive than anything any other curse spirit has done so far on the list, just in terms of like pure feats. In spite of that though, I don't know if you disagree, but it's not really all that powerful. I mean, it's fine, no. I guess. Its innate domain is somewhat useful. Mahito will probably be disrespectful and call it ugly, but...
Yeah, I feel like it's gonna go exactly the same way that it did with Toji. Like, Mahito is just as daring, just enough to be like, you know what? Yeah, let's see what you have to offer. No, you know what? You're ugly.
Yeah, and then he's just gonna easily deal with it. Once again, another cursed spirit where Idol Transfiguration is not really going to be necessary. Mahito can just pull up and just beat it up with pure hands, so it's not really all that strong in spite of its unique ability and setup.
The scissors might give it some problems, but other than that, meh.
Yeah, for sure. Next up on the list, we have the smartest curse spirit in the entire verse, the Grasshopper Curse. A curse spirit that, in my opinion, got like a weirdly interesting fight, or a weirdly like well choreographed fight against Yuji, but not much else. Its claim to fame is having a bunch of limbs.
I feel like Mahito would just get annoyed, so he would take it out even sooner.
Yeah.
Just like constantly saying that he's the smartest in the room. I feel like Mahito, he wouldn't even toy with it, right? He wouldn't even play with his food. Like, he would just be like, all right, hand to the temple and just literally just blow it up somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be pretty easy. It might just be a recreation of the 2 arms versus 4 arms panel we get with Yuji, where, hell, Mahito might make it 4 arms versus 4 arms with Idol Transfiguration if he decides he wants to have a little bit of fun with it. And it's actually kind of funny because we do, like, Mahito actually does make a comment on the Grasshopper Curse getting defeated by Yuji, and I'm pretty sure as he's like walking to go fight against Gojo in Shibuya, he actually like makes an offhanded comment about it being like kinda strong. So take that for what you will, but against Mahito, I think we can agree that it's getting bodied. Hell, even Yuji says as much, that if it were the patch face curse, as he calls him up to that point, it would not have been such an easy fight. Now, next up on the list, we have the dynamic duo blood manipulation brothers, Eso and Kechizu. And this is kind of an interesting fight just because we see that these 2 characters went up against the only 2 that we've seen Mahito call like a direct predator or enemy to him and his technique, being, you know, Eso and Kechizu versus Yuji and Nobara. So I think this is kind of an interesting fight in the sense that it's almost like a spiritual matchup, if you will. But in terms of actual power, it's not all that crazy. I don't know if you want to kind of go over maybe the best they got in their arsenal against Mahito, and if that even means anything.
Right. I mean, I feel like the main interesting thing that both Eso and Kechizu really have to offer is going to be their decay ability, or the poison in their blood. Because I feel like the blood is the main source of both of their power. Eso has his Wing King, and then Kechizu has the blood that he spits out that's just meant to be poisonous and just cause damage to the victim. Now, Wing King probably wouldn't do much damage to Mahito just because it's mostly a physical battle, and no matter how much damage the Wing King can really whip Mahito around with, Mahito can just reshape his body, change his form, and really do whatever he needs to not only dodge Wing King, but just overall get to where he needs to be to do damage to Esso. And Kachizu, despite them being an overall duo, I don't really think they offer much of a threat even coming at Mahito both at the same time, because at the end of the day, even though the decaying blood, if anything, may slow Mahito down, I don't think it's going to be enough to actually kill him or drain him of enough cursed energy to where he actually feels threatened by either of the two brothers.
I completely agree. The best kind of scaling you have is where Choso says that even though, like, in spite of a Finger Bear's power, neither of them would lose to that. So I guess you can say indirectly that at least when combined, they'd put up a better fight than the Finger Bear Curse did, which is, yay for them, I guess. But they don't really do all that much against Mahito for all the reasons allotted above. Their poison is not going to be super useful against Mahito, who can constantly heal even without Idol Transfiguration just because he's a curse. But on top of that, he also just has the ability to deal with them very quickly. Esso is probably going to be the harder to deal with of the two, but it's not going to be something that'll take Mahito all that much time to deal with. Now, next up, maybe even taking revenge for his brothers, we have Choso. And I think this is where we start to get really into the thick of it. This is where we start to get to characters that I think, regardless of whether or not you think they beat Mahito, they at least provide something of an interesting discussion or an interesting battle to go over and conceptualize about. So what do you think about Choso? How do you think his abilities match up? First, let's talk about how he is debuted into the series, in his fight against Yuji. And then I kind of want to get your thoughts about how powered up Choso does against someone like Mahito.
Right. So even in the beginning of the series, Choso is a pretty strong contender for someone that can at least actually go back and forth with someone like Mahito. A special grade, at least in Curse Spirit terms, maybe not so much in Sorcerer terms. Choso's ability to use blood manipulation isn't on par with any other blood manipulation user in the entire series. He really is the staple poster child of this curse technique simply because Choso has unlimited blood, or at least enough blood to go along with his cursed energy, because of his hybrid Curse Spirit form. So not only does he have all of the poison that Kachizu offers, he has all of the blood manipulation, enough to make torrents and waves of blood as we see against Naoya. He has flowing red scale, just like Noritoshi Kamo, to amplify his physical feats, enough to actually do some serious damage to someone like Yuji. And even with little combat training, he's able to go back and forth with hand-to-hand combat with someone like Itadori Yuji, which, as Mahito is on a similar hand-to-hand level to Yuji, maybe depending on if you want to say Yuji has more of an advantage in that aspect than others. Either way, both of these characters can go toe-to-toe with someone who is a combat master like Yuji. So when it comes down to just straight hands, Mahito is up against his first opponent where he just doesn't have full reign and supremacy over.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing with Choso, the one glaring weakness is that, let's say you don't think Choso is going to allow Mahito to get off Idol Transfiguration, or he's at least going to do his best to limit it, most likely because he's aware of his abilities and his curse technique and all of the like. The thing about Choso is that his durability actually is weirdly low in comparison to his other stats, like his strength, his speed, his curse technique quality, and all of those other things. And the reason I say this is because he mentions that all of Yuji's attacks, and Yuji only lands 3 clean wins throughout their fight, basically brought him to nearly losing. And Choso just makes it pretty clear that even though most of the attacks that Yuji got off were guarded, Choso is feeling the pain. He is really in dire straits there. And we know that Mahito is someone strong enough to, in his own words, crack open Yuji's skull if he just puts his back into certain attacks, right? So against a force like that, even without the likes of Idol Transfiguration, with just pure strength and enhancement, Choso would be in some trouble. I think Choso would be at his best when he's fighting from long range with the likes of Piercing Blood, Slicing Exorcism, things of that nature. But with Mahito being able to summon transfigured humans to diversify his attacking capabilities and just distract Choso all around, while I think this Shibuya era is strong, I don't think he's quite enough to make Mahito go all out in any sense of the word. But when we do look at Choso's potential full power, the power that he brought out against Kenjaku when he was extremely desperate, I think it gets a little bit more interesting because his versatility, the thing that I think is what makes him such a good opponent, is amped quite a bit. I mean, he's able to to like control his blood in a little bit of a more versatile way. He's able to like just extend parts of his body, like send out his limbs to attack people from afar, and his stats seem to in general go up from there, to the point where I think like if base Choso or even Flowing Red Scale stack Choso is giving Mahito a low to mid diff fight, this Choso is making it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more difficult, and in spite of him not being able to necessarily hurt Mahito's soul, I do think that it would be something where Mahito would consider it a somewhat of an interesting battle.
Definitely, 110%. And I feel like one of the major things that really holds a candle in this fight, because as we said that Choso, especially Choso, who is awakened and able to use his brother's techniques and mimic them, which will obviously give him a much stronger flow of curse energy, a much stronger use of his blood manipulation. Besides all of that, do we feel like someone like Choso, or at least all curse spirits up to this point, that are actually going to be able to bring some kind of difficulty in Mahito's way, do we feel like they, because they're curse spirits, are just able to battle cursed energy and eliminate Mahito as a spirit of cursed energy? Or do we think someone like Choso may be different because they're hybrid? Do we think they need to be aware of the soul and be able to damage the soul to actually hurt him?
So the interesting thing about that is like we never really see Mahito, I think, just like go up to a cursed spirit and like manipulate its soul. I don't think we get like a direct like one-to-one objective comparison like that in the same way we do sorcerers. However, we do see that with Hanami, Mahito does display an acute awareness of Hanami's soul and like his state of being in a way, to me, that directly shows his idol transfiguration ability works on cursed spirits and that cursed spirits have souls. In fact, like Hanami actually gets like a power up mid-fight with Yuji and Todo because his soul is literally awakening due to him enjoying battle and relishing in it. So I do feel like Mahito's idol transfiguration would be